So in this video, what we're gonna do is actually set up our website. So the very first thing you're gonna do is download a text editor if you haven't already. You could use the one that I'm gonna be using, which is Atom, which is this one right here. There's also an installation guide on my channel. Be sure to click that if you need help installing Atom. Now that you have a text editor, the next thing you want to get is a local web server. So you can actually download either one, which is XAMPP or XAMPP, or WAMP. And again, I have those installation guides on my channel as well. Just click anywhere on the screen and choose the one you want to use. For this project, I'm personally using XAMPP. You can use WAMP, it's the same thing, it's just completely up to you. Just be sure to choose one of them. Lastly, although this is optional, you can download Sass, the CSS framework that I'm going to be using in this series. If you don't know how to download or install Sass, again, there's another installation guide on my channel. Be sure to check that out. You don't have to use Sass, however. You can use just regular CSS. The reason why I'm using Sass is because of organization and the ability to use variables. So once you have all that done, you should be ready to start setting up the website. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually start my local web server by going to the control panel. Oh, it's already started. What you're going to do, you're going to press start for Apache and start for MySQL. So now my local web server is running. So I'm going to click this Explore. Again, I'm using XAMPP. You could use WAMP. And you go to htdocs, and then within here you could I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. I don't need that. And what we're going to do is actually start our website. So I'm going to call this website, a very generic name. That's just a way for me to recognize what this folder or this project is about. And within the website is where all our files are going to be. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to close this control panel and actually open up that folder that I just made in my text editor, which is Atom. So I'm going to go to this PC, this XAMPP, htdocs website, and I'm going to select that folder and press that. So now that I have this guide or this folder tree on the left of my screen, so I can start implementing files. So the first thing we're going to do is actually create an index file. So we're going to create a new file called the index.php. And the reason why we're using .php is because we're going to be using PHP later on. You could use .html, but we're going to use .php. So the index page is basically the front page of your website, the main page, the landing page of your website. So from there, we're going to create a new folder called CSS, and then another folder called Sass, because we're going to be using Sass. I accidentally created it within this folder, which is not what I wanted to do. So I'm going to do new folder, Sass. So we're going to implement Sass in here, and then push all that code into the CSS file, and then we're going to link that CSS file onto our various web pages. Okay, and then we're going to have an includes folder, which is going to include the variety sections of a website that is repeated across multiple web pages. A good example of that is the nav bar. So this is where we're gonna create the nav bar and then implement it or include it across multiple web pages so that we have less code to deal with, so we don't have to repeat code across each page. So we could start with defining the index.php file by using HTML. I realize the text is a little small. Let me make that a lot larger so you guys could see. So HTML like that. Start your HTML tags. As well, we're going to define the doc type, which is just a way to define that we're using HTML5. So we have that. Then we have the head. And then we have the body. So this is going to be the very basic template of every web page on our website. What we can do include in the head tags, we can include a title tag, which will give you the title of the page, which is which will show up within the tab of the website, if that makes any sense. And then we could proceed on with the body, and that's that. Okay, so that's the basic skeleton of any web page on this website, and we're probably going to implement the same schematic onto other web pages. So Now what we can do is actually create the head file. So go into the includes and create a new file called head.php. And what this file is going to do is actually going to link in all the common stylings or plugins that are going to be used across the website, and we're simply going to include it in the head tag within each page. Okay, so the first thing we want is probably the jQuery library, because we're going to be using jQuery, I'm sure, in the future. So what we're going to do is go to Google and type in jQuery library by Google. If I could spell library. Let me see. Hosted libraries by Google. You can also download the jQuery file and implement it in your website, directly. So you don't have to worry about Google servers shutting down. But I really doubt they're gonna shut down. So that's why I'm using this, because it's a lot easier. So we're gonna go to jQuery. We're gonna use a 2x snippet. The reason why is because I had issues with the version 3 of jQuery with some JavaScript was not working so well. So I usually use the second version. So what I'm going to do is comment this and say jQuery plugin so I can keep myself organized. And there we go. Now we included jQuery across, or at least in the head file. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is include global styling. So we're going to say this is going to be global styling. And what that is CSS code that is going to be used across multiple web pages that are just the same. So again, a good example would be the styling of the navbar, because we're going to use the navbar more than likely on every page. So it's always just to have it in one place and then include it on the other places. So what we're going to do is actually do, I think it's link href, and then we're going to do css/global. Note that we're not using sass-global. And the reason why is because we're going to actually use CSS code instead of Sass code. But we're going to use Sass code to write CSS code and transform it into CSS so that the browser could actually read it. So we're going to leave it like that. So I linked in the global styling. Okay, one thing to note is that this is not created yet. So what we're going to do is actually create this in Sass. So we're going to create a new file within the Sass folder called global.sass. And then just to get started on some coding for the website, what we're going to do is define the body. I realize I'm using Sass, so this is going to be body. And we're going to give it a margin of 0 and a padding of 0, and that should get rid of the extra spacing that the web browser gives the page by default. So this is in Sass coding, so what we have to do is actually start to run Sass. So we can convert this into CSS, and hopefully it will be converted automatically so that when we open up this CSS file, we'll get this global.css file in here. Okay, so what we're going to do is actually run the command Ruby, type in Ruby. Oh, it looks like I do not have Sass installed. I'll be right back. Okay, so now that I have Sass installed, what you're going to do is click the Windows key and type in Ruby, and you should start the command prompt with Ruby so we can start using Sass. You should already have Sass installed, as I said earlier, but then again, it is optional. So I'm going to go to the root drive, which is, I forgot the shortcut to that. So what we're going to do is go to the root drive, which is the C drive, and what we're going to do is change the directory so that we're within the folder called website that we created earlier. So once you're at the root directory or the C drive, what you want to do is change the directory so that we're within this website folder that we created earlier. So we're going to type in examp/htdocs/website, and now we're in the folder that is being shown right here. So now we want to actually start using Sass. So you just say sass-watch, and we're going to watch Sass folder into the CSS folder. So what this is saying is that Sass is going to watch for any changes within the Sass folder, and once there's a change detected, it's going to convert all the Sass code into the CSS folder with the same organization that is within the Sass folder, and that's going to be the same as the CSS folder. So you'll see what I mean. As you can see, it already noticed a change, which was the global.sas file that I created within the SAS folder, and it recreated it within the CSS folder with the same type of organization. So we're going to leave that running in the background. If you click on this, it converts our SAS code, this regular ordinary SAS code, into CSS code. And again, the reason why we're using SAS is mostly because of organization and slightly because of the use of variables. Okay, so now we can further organize the SAS folder since we have the other things that already set up. So we'll leave the CSS folder closed. We'll close that. So now what we want is actually create a new folder within the SAS folder called Pages. I lied. We're going to create a new folder for each page. So for that, we're going to say index because that's the only page we have right now. And what we're going to do later on when we have this index page actually styled and designed for the website, we're going to break up this web page into various components. So a good example, let's say we have an image slider. So I'm going to comment out. We're going to use PHP. So this is just a very brief example of what I mean. So later on, we're going to include different sections of the website. So this will be index, or it should be pages slash index slash image slider or something like that. And then it'll be .php. So what's happening here is we're going to be including some sort of file from this directory, and we're going to implement it for this web page. So again, what we're going to do is break down this web page into various components and then include it from various directories so that we can stay a little bit more organized. So to do the same thing within SAS, what we're going to do is create a new folder called index, which we already did, my bad. And within here, we're going to create the styling. So we'll say new file, and it'll be image slider dot SAS. And that'll be all the styling for the image slider within SAS. And that just makes it easier for me and hopefully for you guys to pinpoint what code we're looking at and what portion of the website we're looking at. And then from there, we're going to create a new file. I know this is a little much at once. We're going to create called index.sas. And what we're going to do is import, which is the same thing as include, the SAS styling for this index page. So what I'm going to do is actually style each component within the index folder. So the image slider, for instance, maybe a hero image, maybe there's a quick section that directs you to social media links and stuff like that. They'll be all categorized within this index folder, and there'll be separate styling for each component. And once I have all the stylings for that web page, what I can do is import each styling onto the actual web page. So this will be index slash image slider dot SAS or something like that. So then so what we're doing is grabbing all the SAS code from each individual portion and then putting them all together into one full file called index.sas, and then SAS will convert this into a regular CSS file. So as we could see there. So that's what we're going to do in terms of organization for SAS. It may be a little complicated at first, but after a few videos, you should understand what I mean. Okay, another folder we're going to create within the root directory is going to be DB, and that's kind of self-explanatory. That's going to be where we're going to include the connect file for the database, which we'll be using later. So connect.php, and we'll use that later. And the next folder we're going to create is the JS folder, which is again self-explanatory. It's where all the JavaScript we're going to use goes to, again, for more organization issues to solve them. And I believe that is it. I don't think, oh, actually, there's one more folder called Pages. Okay, so this is where I was talking about the whole styling for the separate pages. So the idea, I'll quickly go through this again. We're going to have various sections of a website. So this will be section 1, section 2, and so forth. And these will be different components, such as maybe the image slider, social media links, footer or something. We're going to have different sections and include it on each web page. And then within the pages folder, we're going to create new folders called index. And then within this folder, I'm going to have section 1.php like that. And then we could actually include this section -1.php onto the main index file. Okay, so that's what I mean in terms of pages and as well as Sass. So we're basically doing the same thing within pages as in Sass, and then we're going to push it all together onto one main page. For pages, it'll be for the index.php, but for the Sass, it'll be index.sass, which will be converted later into index.css. So I know that's a lot going on right now, and I'm very sorry if that sounded very convoluted. But this type of organization is kind of needed for very large websites. If you have any other suggestions, or maybe you have a better way to organize your own website, feel free to go ahead. Again, this tutorial is not for you to, copy everything that I do. It's for you to actually understand my thought process when coming to solving problems or designing websites or designing functionalities for websites. So just this is just a way for you to understand what I am doing, and hopefully you don't get confused on all this organization issue. So hopefully that makes sense. I believe that's everything you need to do to set up your website. Make sure you are running Sass every time you start editing this website. I know I'm going to probably mess up a few times by forgetting to run Sass, so make sure to have it running in the background when you're editing so it could change on the go. And make sure you have a local web server, and make sure you have a text editor to do all this stuff. And I believe that is it. That is everything I need to show you guys for you to get started building a website. In the next video, I think we'll start off with the nav bar, and then we'll move on from there. Oh, and if you guys don't understand this organization, there is a video on it on my channel. I maybe explained it a lot better there. Feel free to check that out as well.